Ganesh sir?
Sir.
Please go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. Good morning, students, staff, faculty members, and today's chief guest. A warm welcome back to all for ISTE sponsored induction refreshers program on business intelligence and big data analytics. It is my privilege to introduce today's chief guest, Lawrence Mohanraj, sir. Thank you, sir. Lawrence Mohanraj is a student and startup developer advocate. He retired as General Manager at IBM India in October 2021, having served as the country leader for IBM Academic Initiative in India and South Asia, with a special focus on student developer communities, helping build a pool of skills and capabilities relevant to startups and enterprises requirements of the IT industry. He is better known as an advocate of cloud, cognitive and emerging technologies in academia in recent years. While serving on academic councils and boards of studies of private and state technical universities, he is excuse me. Okay, right. So while serving on academic councils and boards of studies of private and state technical universities, his endeavor is to accelerate the adoption of information technologies in technical higher education, focusing on the developer community and helping build the startup ecosystem on campus. Prior to his role in academia, he was served as a consulting services leader for IBM. His experience in providing products, services, and solutions in information technology spans a diverse spectrum of client engagements over the past 3 decades, cutting across multiple industries, both private and government in India and overseas. A business development person at the core and a huge aptitude for technology, he is better known for articulating the business benefits of technology to his clients earlier in corporates and in recent years in academia. And thank you so much, sir. Welcome back to take the session, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ganesh sir. Sir, welcome back to today's resource person. Please go ahead, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Just give me a moment. I'm trying to. So, very good morning to all of you. Before we begin, before I even begin talking, I'd like to present to you a quick video just to set the tone of what we're going to be covering today. Okay, so just one moment, please. It's a very short video, hardly 1 minute. Okay, now quick check. Is this screen that I'm playing visible to you? Is a video visible to you? Philip, sir?
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Is it visible? Is it visible and audible?
Yes, sir. Not audible, visible, sir. I think.
Is it audible now?
No, sir. Not audible.
Okay, so that's a technical snag now. How do we fix the... Okay, I'm going to try once more. If it doesn't, then we'll possibly skip the video and go just a 1-minute video. Is it audible this time?
No, sir.
No.
I think,
Okay. Okay. Then I'll just close this video and let me get back to. Okay. So. Thank you very much. Is this visible full screen? Check.
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible, sir.
Visible. Full screen. Is it full screen to you?
Full screen not visible, sir. Maybe some of the screen is visible, sir.
Okay. One
Yeah.
second.
Now. Okay. Okay.
One second. Let me get the entire screen. I think I chose the wrong option.
Yeah. Now it is okay, sir.
Okay, it's full screen now. Sorry
Yes,
about
sir.
this. This
No
is most
problem.
of the,
No
with all,
problem.
I'm not too familiar with this particular software. I'm used to the WebEx.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
very good morning to all of you, friends from the academia. I'm given to understand that you have already gone through a couple of days, about a dozen odd sessions that have already preceded this session. And when you're talking on the theme of business intelligence and big data analytics, so that must be a lot of technology and technical content that you have been looking at, and I'm sure that you have found it relevant to your roles in the individual colleges and universities that you belong to. What I am going to do today is basically try to take you through completely, hoping it'll be a break from that heavy technology deep dive into something which is very much related to what your students are going to be seeing once they enter into real life. Okay, so what is real life situation, and how does uh, that matter to you as a teacher? It has to matter. So I've noticed that in my conversations that I've had over the last 10 odd years I've been in academia, talking to various professors and lecturers across the length and breadth of this country. um, they are, you guys are so good in what you are. Some of you even have a double doctorate and all sorts of things. So there's no point in my coming and talking to you about blockchain or about something, AI, ML, DL. But what we would give you that industry perspective that may sort of be a covering, an icing on the cake that you already have prepared so well. So it is in that spirit that I'm going to take you through this couple of charts that I've prepared for you, to share with you a perspective of how the subject that you have dwelt on so long, delivered hours and hours of lectures on this, and done so much of possibly practicals, taken part in seminars such as this. Maybe even your students have come back and told you that you've taken part in hackathons, which were focused on solving real life problems using artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. Now, uh, based on that, let's take a deep dive into it. I am keeping it rather simple. Um, really speaking, I would like to take you through what IBM has prescribed as its approach towards AI in the form of a ladder, because it is in a sequential and in a very logical flow when it comes to handling data, right? And because that is at the bottom, right? Rightly, your topic says business intelligence and big data analytics. So the data part of it is right there at the core, and so IBM's prescription. Then we take a look at the perspective that enterprises have with regards to this whole AI, the AI perspective from the point of view of enterprises, which is something that I'm sure that in the last couple of years, with so many talks being given to you or your students going for internships, coming with the feedback, and some progressive colleges even sending faculty members to work with industry for some time, you would have got some peep into this world of what actually happens where the rubber meets the road. And again, when we talk about the world outside, please notice the word in the brackets on this agenda. We are going to focus on the enterprise, because any deployment, any technology that we deploy for a business need, when you look at it from a scaling point of view, there's a big difference in a deployment at a lower end of the scale and at the higher end of the scale. Take security. You know how easy and straightforward it could be to implement it in a smaller environment rather than in an enterprise that is across the world, present in let's say 200 countries. Then what happens vis-a-vis one single room where there are maybe 40 people sitting down together? Now, we'll also cover the whole process of decision making, not the whole process, sorry, the a little insight into what decision making with AI could be from our point of view. And finally, before we go to the roles and skills, we will touch on some use cases. So that is the agenda that I have with me. Now, when you look at data as it is present today in the enterprises, you find it more or less in a very chaotic manner. In spite of all the maturity of organizations, even those that have been there for multiple decades, I'm not talking about those who were born yesterday. Look at large enterprises, multinational companies which which have a point of presence in multiple countries right around the globe. Let's take Coca-Cola, let's take Pepsi, take an automobile manufacturer like I don't know, Hyundai, take anything at all, but with a very let's take an oil company, let's like Shell, or BP, or what, any of these kind of situations, which is really huge in terms of operations, but there needs to be, and there is a need. A bank, for example, you look at HSBC, for instance. I love the jingle. The jingle says the global bank with a local view. So it doesn't matter where you are. Take Vodafone as a service provider. You can seamlessly move from one country to the other, whether they are present there or not. Mostly they are present. So in all of this, there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind. There's a lot of data that is hidden mercifully from the view of the user. And and this data, if you really look at it, this is how the flows will be. The flows will be absolutely far from, organized and very neat. It's in the passage of time, with the passage of time, as the business needs grew, things were brought into place and data flows were created and approved. Models were done and then it was deployed. And so it's more like this Chinese noodles that you have, it's in spaghetti all over the place. The backends the data centers there, the all the toolkits that you have in the middle, your UIs in the front with a host of manipulation and the tools also, like the coding languages, or the applications at the far end, like you see in this chart, Salesforce, Adobe, whatever it is, or thanks to your data striping, your Hadoops of the world, which is available in the center. Between all of this, when you really look at a large, again, I keep repeating this, large enterprise across multiple countries, it becomes a nightmare for the CIO and for the infrastructure people to make sure that it is kept up, and then the application layer on top of it to run smoothly across time zones. So this is where what we consider as the core of AI, as the basis, as the oil of the business world. If this is the condition, um, like you refine crude oil and then you make it into all the way up to aviation fuel, or somewhere in between the automobile fuels, the fossilized fuels, of course, the analogy holds good here, right? And so as professionals in the higher technical higher education, I call upon each of you to try to, while you dive deeper and deeper under the hood of this technology, try to use every occasion, be it your self-help, videos or news articles, or attending conferences like this, or which are focused on industry, and or personal visits and experience, or working together in partnership with an industry to build something in your innovation centers, whatever it may be. I strongly recommend that you start taking a look at that, because that's when the theory and the practice comes together, and it will address this very big lacunae in the Indian system. Now, this chart is going to be here for some time, because I'm going to take a slight detour to set the perspective, because that's the basis on which we're going to build on the rest of it. When we look at the number of developers, okay, in this world, the head count as a percentage. Unfortunately, we don't have a very interactive system here, and I know that if I were to throw a question up, I may not get much of a response on the chat windows, unlike in face-to-face where I could actually see you. So I'm not going to get into a Q&A right now, or a quiz, but what I'm going to try to tell you is that when you really look at, ask yourself this question and see if you know the answer. What is the percentage of the developers globally that come from India? I'm not talking about these all these celebrity CEOs like the chief of Google or Microsoft or even IBM, or latest Twitter and all of this. Leave out all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about heavyweight weightlifters, the guys who are actually delivering stuff, developers, okay, technocrats who are sitting and creating technology. All of this. What percentage do you think, from the world perspective, originates from India? You'll be surprised that just about a few years back, we were not number one. The United States was number one in terms of the head count of the number of developers, and India was trailing close behind at 3.7 million, while US had 5 and all. Now, that has changed. It has flipped over as we crossed from 2020 into 21. Both NASSCOM stats and an IBM individual study has sort of gone into this, and the projections are yet to be verified, but there are enough solid pointers to show that today India is the cradle to the biggest, pie in the chart, in the pie chart of developers. We hold the biggest slice. Now, while this is the number and brute force, what is that this brute force brings to the table in terms of value? Again, I said, leave the top guys whom we all celebrate and we feel proud of, and we even beat our chests about. I'm talking about, take a application store, like an iOS application store or a Android application store. Take any of these kind of things, right? You have commercial, you have entertainment, and a host of other categories. But when it comes to real commercial stuff that is available there, what do you think would be the contribution of developers from India, which is number one, into a store like that? The results are not being solidly documented, but in one of the talks, which was quite some time back, we are in 21, and I would say about 5 years ago, at that point in time, one of the very large Play stores, sort of, we got to know that the contribution of in a single digit, not even in the lower double digits. We were in the single digit. In this 5 years, it may have grown to a double digit, but it will still be hovering in the lower part, around 10, 15, and not more than that. Now, this is the problem that you folks can fix. Nobody else can fix. It's the technical higher education and the other arts and science colleges which have these computer science and computer application streams, the faculty there. You are the key to making this shift by, first of all, acknowledging the problem, and two, to sort of keep that in mind. You may not be able to directly address it, but keep that in mind while you're taking every single class, be it theory or be it in your hands-on. And that's what I hope to cover here and show you in terms of what really happens out there, and what's the nature in which it happens. And we look at a few use cases and move forward. So having said this much on this slide, let me take you to the first point on our agenda, which is this is more a prescription, right? Because this is not necessarily gospel value. This is not hard and fast. This is IBM's approach. Because look at the words in the title here. We are talking about not switching over to AI. You don't cut over. You don't demolish something old, British colonial house, and replace it with a 3-floored or a 4-floored apartment. You don't do that in AI. It is more like, more like a journey, because there are a lot of iterations. There's a lot of slippages. There's a lot of learning associated with those slippages, and then there is fine-tuning, and then there's an optimization, and then there's a continual eye on keeping the kettle warm. So this kind of an approach, when you look at it, when you're playing with data, because that's what core, you will have to possibly look at some of these. You'll possibly find this in coming in different words and different phraseology, but it would have to cover as a minimum, as a baseline, these elements. So at the bottom of the ladder, when you start climbing this journey through the ladder, you have the collection of data. Okay, the very nature of data today has become so complex compared to what you faculty members were students yourselves. From that period to now, I mean, when you did your railway reservations those days, you never even had a color screen. You had a monochrome screen, typically in those green colored ones, with matrix of dots on it, and we call them CUI, character user interface, right? So the CUI based terminals which were working on, two-tier system, all of this. So that time in life was much more simple. But today, look at the amount of data that is available. And it is, I think enough statistics has been thrown at you, and you possibly use them in your own talks and charts as to how that has blown completely, volcanically erupted and disrupted this entire world. So with that amount of data, are we missing the bus? So to make it simple, first of all, to bring it together, okay, and thereby it becomes a bit useful. I mean, what happens when you switch, when you shift homes? Let's say you're moving into a new apartment, and then you're carrying the, belongings from an older household to the new apartment. You mostly do it in the last minute, and so you end up carrying a whole lot of junk with you. And in the new house, everything has a place and a tag, and you start organizing things, and you realize that all of a sudden everything in its place, and there is a place for everything, and then it becomes so accessible. So if there is a leak in the washroom, you don't have to go and call, I forgot the name of the service provider. You don't have to call these guys through an app to come and fix this problem. You can just walk up, because you know exactly where the spanner is, and all it needs is a little twist on the spanner, the right size spanner, of course. So that's accessibility in an analogous format. Now, why would it not be different when it comes to data? Excuse me. So the first step, therefore, the logical step would be to bring it all together, and then we move on to an organization. So when it is, I may not have access to it as a particular kind of user in an organization, but then if my role and job role needs to have an access to that, that is what is covered in the previous rung. And in the next rung, we start the organization part of it. Okay. So if at all our analytics has to, be meaningful, this prerequisite stage of organization really matters substantially for the final quality of the insights that we receive flowing into the decisions. Now, each of these stages, by the way, has a whole lot of tools that are available today. And even as we are talking, there are new tools that are going to come out, and you'll be surprised how I've been in the IT industry for before I retired last October for more than 40 years, close to 40 years. 39, 40, whatever. And I remember the first deals that I sold to Southern Railways or to LIC or State Bank of India. Life was so simple, but today it's lots more complex when you try to put a business proposition together. And that's simply pointing to this fact that, the whole focus of the business is to try to leverage technology in such way that it can become competitive. And this shift, becoming competitive, more competitive, can happen only in the context of a mindset and a culture of transformation, business transformation. The whole business, the way you collect the information, the way you organize it, all of that has to change. There may be a starting point, and there may be something that is done. Let's take the case of Airtel. How did Airtel happen? Airtel didn't drop from heaven. There were various circles, telecom circles across the country, and these were brought in together, and each one had its own billing system. Each one had its own geospatial, uniqueness. Each one had their own types of clients, But when you came together, it was a nightmare to sort of, and you imagine this approach of a ladder given to them, because it is a journey. You can't overcome this. Last night, very interestingly, I got this, not night, it was evening, late evening, I get this phone call from a number. Normally, I don't take numbered calls, but these days you never know. So I just took the call, and it was a very human-like voice. I could easily make out the IVR voices, okay, but this was not an IVR, I thought. But later on, a few long seconds into the phone call, I realized that the person was talking, and any response from my side was going unrecognized. And then I said, what if? So they've perfected that. And then you know what happened? So what do we do when we get these kind of messages? By the way, it was a case of my missed payment. All right. So there's an automatic system which flags it off, and it's coming down, and it's the system is calling me through GSM gateway. So what happened is the conversation, the voice stopped and is asking me a question, and whatever I'm going to answer, whatever I answered, it is going to take it as an input and take it there. Supposing I say, so is this correct? If I say yes, so now if they want to go legal tomorrow, they say, okay, we spoke to the person, he said yes, that he accepts it. Second stage, it goes on talking, and now I'm getting angry, and I'm trying to check, really, is this IVR? Then I realize it is, but it's a very new avatar which I've never come across. I've set up some of the finest IVRs in this country way back in I think it was 95 or 96, I don't remember. Paraphonics, one of the best that we used to have globally at that point in time. So from that to here, just come a long way, and it's the next question is coming. And I tried purposely, like my student days, I tried to put a googly and throw a wrong answer. I'm sorry, but the question is, and it goes back. I was like shocked. Then I finally decided that anyway, it's a recorded call. So it's going to feed back into a database. Now, how did this happen? Relate that back to this chart that you're staring at right now. Okay, if this action that was taken, I've actually gone, in this example, to the top of the ladder, when the infusion stage happens and then something has been acted upon across the organization, it could not, such a beautiful method. You've completely removed all these low paid people who are, maybe 10 standard attempted, 12 standard attempted, give a list of defaulters, ask them to call in this example. And as soon as you see those numbers, and then we have these suspected spam call alerts, which comes from our service providers, we immediately cut the line. But see what has happened. Because of the way in which they have approached it, they are able to have a meaningful human kind of an interaction, but at the same time, data is being populated into a database, and there is some processing happening on that, and there's going to be some actions taken on that as well. Now, moving on in this ladder, we then look at the actual analytics module or the stage or the phase in this journey of each project. So you build. Okay, building is easy, it's logical, but as I mentioned earlier in my initial minutes of this talk, the scaling up is what is important. And when you scale up to maintain the quality of service with trust and transparency, every word there in this chart is important. Okay, building, I'm sure if you put an MCQ to your students, they'll get it right. But building to scale is where you need to draw their attention to. And building to scale, okay, keeping trust and transparency. If I start delving into trust and transparency, then that's another big subroutine which I shall not venture into. And so let's move on to the last word that is left on this chart before I touch on the modernization part, is the infusion, where you actually operationalize all your findings, your insights. You're finally presented with a couple of options, and you've got an insight that you've not ever had before, and the people have presented this to the senior management, and the senior management are now staring at it and saying, oh, okay, so if this is the cause, let's take that Airtel example. If I'm sitting at 180 days outstanding in telecom business, if you don't collect your money, or if your money doesn't get collected, even after 180 days, you're going to be in big losses. Right, so how do we reduce that 180 days to, let's say, something like half of it, 90 days, and then from 90 days, bring it down to 45 days, and hopefully, or if the chunks are too big, something smaller, some milestones, and bring it down. So from that point of view, they are able to look at these insights that they have got, and then the various people will come to that in a later slide. They will be able to take it, and this will be implemented throughout the organization. Now, this is the start of the journey in this kind of a logical and a methodic manner. There's a method behind the madness of this huge amount of data. You will be rattling off the 4 V's, or you can become even 5 V's of data, you know, veracity, velocity, and all of that, volume and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a big confusion like we saw in the previous chart. But here, what you see in the right extreme, or to your right, is the modernization. So you have made a beginning in this, but you need to shift gears halfway through in the enterprise and make them make the whole experience, be it for internal employees or your clients outside or your business partners, B2B, business to business, okay, your partners, your suppliers, and the whole ecosystem is all connected now onto this platform. You modernize that. I'll give you again a real life example. You take this net banking. Net banking from the earlier banking was one quantum jump, but then from when applications, Androids and iOS came inside, mobile applications came into that space, net banking suddenly, stayed put very strongly on the web browser, but they also had a point of presence in these mobile applications. For those of you, and I'm sure all of you in this group here belong to that age group, where when you started and you got your first salary, there was no net banking perhaps, and certainly if there's net banking, there was no net banking on Android or iOS or any mobile platform. But for those of you who then finally got onto it in a year or two after you started your career, look at the number of updates that you kept on accepting, and where they have reached. Your salary account today is on Bank A. Look at Bank A's history. If you have been with them for 10 years, look at 7, 8 years back, 10 years back when they first started this till today. The entire application, how they have constantly, it's not a point in time exercise. It's constantly, one update may be just to do with the aesthetics and the colors. The other may have to do with security. The third may have to do with privacy, so on and so forth. I gave you an example a little earlier from a credit card point of view. So this is what actually happens. Oh, what did I do? I'm sorry.
Sir, no problem, sir.
I pressed a button and 1 minute.
Yeah, please share your screen.
Yeah, select Windows screen. Let me, yes. Okay. I'm laughing at myself because after so much of experience, I'm still making these mistakes just because I'm so hung up to one type of software and I've not tried my hand much multiple other types.
Yes,
Anyway,
no problem, sir. No problem. Yeah,
my apologies for that.
no problem, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is another very powerful word that you have on your screens now in front of you. The last word on the title, please don't read anything below that. Just stay with me on this one word, innovation. Okay. This innovation is something why your students will be hired. Okay. They're not going to be hired because of the fancy CGPAs. That may be a help to shortlist if the supply that you're giving in terms of number of students is very high and the requirement of skills is low. If there is a skew in the supply demand there for human capital, then they would use your CGPAs. But other than that, we all know that if you are buying a Mercedes-Benz car, you're not going to go into the showroom and bend underneath the car and count if there are 4 tires fitted to the car. You don't do that even for a 2 lakh Maruti or a 3 lakh Maruti car, like 800. You don't do that. So innovation, so the academics, the core that all these 1 credit courses, your 4 credit courses, subjects, your industry electives and your other electives, all these things, and you hit those magic numbers in your studies, 180 and all that, all this is not going to take you beyond. It will only help you to get your foot in the door. Because when a student comes, if I'm employing a student and I know that I'm employed from institution A, I don't look down at the 1 crore car and check to see if there are tires. I don't want to do that because I know it is from institution A or institution Z. So there is a certain quality. But what I'm going to look for is found in very, it's very rare these days. It is beginning to catch up, and we're beginning to see. I'm going to use a phrase which some of you, if you have met me before in some other talk somewhere, you would know this. I call it this lovely Hindi movie, which was then retaken in other languages, including Tamil, was the 3 Idiots. It's about making omelets without eggs. It's going beyond the 9 dots. That is the new IQ, the IQ that you and I cleared in campus, and which got our jobs. Was I there stood for intelligence. But today, IQ would mean most probably, I'm just joking, not change it. What I'm saying, as IT people, we need to say IQ today is innovation quotient. How good is my student in solving a problem? You're giving him not an egg, you're giving him you're giving him an eggshell, and you're asking him to make an omelet. That's exactly what the real world is. And where does AI come into this picture? That's possibly the magic wand, which can help you, provided a whole ecosystem of it has been set up to be able to do this on-the-fly changing of tires on a moving car. Because the world today is like, the trains may not even stop for you. It's like jumping in and out of a moving train. That's the pace at which things are moving. Life is moving, health is moving, finances are moving, everything is moving. And so technology better keep pace with that. So what are you doing in the campus? You are teaching them certain technologies. You are giving them certain practicals in your labs, right? And you're asking them to synthetically or as close as possible to real life solve certain real life problems in a controlled environment with some limited data, and you're giving them that experience there with some partners from the industry who are happy to help you. So when you're doing all of this, please remember that these students of yours, when they step out of campus and go into real life, working as a data engineer or a data scientist or anything in between, they are not going to have any use of the technologies that they graduated on and excelled and distinction in, nor are the problems that they solved using those technologies and tools in the campus. Those problems are not going to exist. Okay, you must have seen that humorous WhatsApp clip which talks about crossing a road, which is a visual on 30 seconds visual on crossing the road. How people today, are the older generation like you, me, faculty members, we are struggling to cross the road because we were told turn right, turn left, again turn right, and then start crossing the road. And this visual shows some girls trying to cross the road in India, not able to, and you find our student there happily texting, and then he just puts his left hand and then he does the puts out his right hand and does the left hand without taking his eyes off the screen, and he reaches safely. And so this is good humor. But coming down here, it is the innovation that we need to concentrate while we keep looking at all of these wonderful stuff. So when you look at the C-suite now, I can assume that most of you, the majority of you, would know what is the meaning of C-suite. It is important too that all of you know this term. Unfortunately, we don't have a polling system quickly to find out if I should touch on it, but permit me. I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but it is so important. So I need to make sure that you understand what is C-suite. Okay. Now, we are all familiar with the word Chief Executive Officer. And we also know that organizations have under the CEO a line of managers for each function. Supposing it's a factory, then you have, you can start off with a Chief Financial Officer. You can have a Chief Marketing Officer. You can have a Chief Sales Officer. And there are hundreds of functions, as many functions as you want. You have a C for chief in this three-letter acronym. You have a C for chief, you have an O for officer. The middle one is a variable X. So we also refer to it as a CXO, which is this group of people who are so highly paid to run any organization. They are also, that group is called the C-suite. Right? So sometimes back when you hire a person to be heading a function in the CXO role, let's say he's a chief marketing officer, the criteria for hiring them, the HR criteria, was totally different from what it is today. Today, when you hire, Gartner has done this study as recent as 2-3 years ago, 2019, if you look at the footnote there, says that they found out that AI, the topic that we are looking at in this conference, AI is a top skill for the next generation of C-suite, which is already in place now. It is not number one in this chart that you have in front of you, but while it may be number two there, second to design thinking, it still occupies a very prominent position. And if you combine it with the data science and data governance and all those similar topics, I mean, it clearly is, you cannot have a outdated guy who comes and says, I am not going to listen to what you're saying. If you're saying this year for the festival season of Dashera, we are not going to offer 40% discount. I'm not going to listen to you. My experience says you have to give 40% discount, otherwise you won't get this. So that old style of gut feel kind of marketing and sales and running an organization versus a data-driven insight and then actionable insights and then the actual rollout is so very different. So today, if how is this related to what you guys are doing? You need to know that even at the top, there is that visibility. There is a study that IBM does once in 2 years, going and meeting these CXO, the C-suite people. 1 year they will talk to the CEOs. Another round in 2 years they will talk to the CFOs, the financial officers, MOs, the marketing officers, and across private and government, across various countries, small and large economies, which are very small, economies which are very large, economies that are vibrant, economies that are not so vibrant, and they bring together, so to say, what a CEO says on a given topic. So in that topic, when you see, technology as a general word was somewhere down on the priority of the C-suite, of the CXO people, but it has risen steadily. It tanked in between around 2013, 14 and all that, but then it's again starting a steep climb. And today they had better, today you can't go to the airport in a taxi unless you have a driving license. Yeah, you heard me right. And I'm purposely saying that. Do you need a driving license to hire a car and be driven to an airport? You don't need to. A CEO can sit behind and relax in a car, and the chauffeur is going to do his job. But hello, Imagine a situation that's actually happening, how stupid this analogy may be, how far-fetched this analogy may be, that unless you have a driving license, you cannot take a taxi ride to the airport or to wherever you want to go. That's as important as it is. Now look at the two other data points that you have from very powerful names. MIT, Sloan, says that 85% view AI as a strategic priority. IDC says 60% plan major redesigns of processes with AI. Look, nothing is showing 100%. It's a journey. People are not quite there, but people have started. They are now only saying, I have to, I must. But people have not yet started it. Many are progressive. They are the trailblazers. They are the adventurous types. So they have already convinced their managements, and they've gone forward, and they're beginning to see the returns, reaping the returns of their investment and their bold decisions. But the vast majority of enterprise is still somewhere in between. And that is why it's important, at least for the next window of about 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And you know what has happened already when this journey has started, the whole AI deployment story has become so complex. Okay. When it started off, you just had a few things like Hadoop, Shadoop, and all that, which you had to keep in mind. But where was blockchain then? Where was IoT then? Okay, it's just amazing. Cybersecurity, what was it at that point in time? What is cybersecurity today? So complexity has become more because there are a host of other emerging technologies, which there's no competition here, but they're all sort of adding to the overall basket that is available to you to tap into, keeping AI at the core and moving forward. When the first viruses, in initial stages, there was no word called cybersecurity. It was simply called antivirus companies. Because all they needed to do was, when your screen PC says happy birthday Joshi, you needed and you are stoned, then at that point you put one floppy into the floppy drive, and that is antidote, and it will remove that virus, and you continue. Non-malicious virus to malicious virus, it became worse and worse. But today cybersecurity is not about removing viruses. It's become so complex, and it is like, you cannot be responding, you cannot be reacting. You've got to take preventative actions in place, and you've got to first bring a whole discipline. So every technology, every science has moved up, and the platforms that host all of this has become so much stressed and strained, that what has happened today, all of a sudden supercomputer is not enough. You've got to go to quantum computing. So quantum computing is also there, which says I can manage all of this and give you that smooth, seamless performance to be able to ultimately achieve what you need to achieve. I wish I had the video that I tried to play, that 1-minute video, that would have given you a nice intro to. Oh, again, I hit the wrong button. I'm hitting the space bar every time. I'm sorry about that. 1 second. I should not touch the space bar next time. Okay. All right. So I think I'm beginning to run quite substantially behind time. So I'm going to try to pace up. But I believe that after your heavy technical stuff that you've been bombarded with, a little perspective of this, even if it is a little bit repetitive, will drive home some very core points. So now the CX, or the C-suite leaders, business leaders, they are turning to AI as the savior to produce the kind of outcomes. If they need to show, when a CEO is hired, he's not told to move the company. He may be told, yes, you have to do so much of sales, and you need to move from 400 crores, you need to move to 500 crores. But the point is, he will be told to increase the profitability. Now, how is he going to increase the profitability? For those of you with commerce background, there's only that much denominator numerator manipulation that you can do, and the 4 P's of marketing, if you're a marketing guy, to play with that in order to be more profitable. But today there are a lot of insights that you can get, and there's diamonds in the dust that only a technology like AI, and that's for this topic that I'm giving you, a business, unless it is AI infused, not retrofitted. Okay, so there is a big difference between taking milk and putting coffee powder and then serving coffee, and percolating the coffee and then adding hot water first to the decoction, and then that is the process of infusion. Or take tea bags, how you infuse the hot water with the tea, rather than, so that is the way in which you need to approach this whole AI. So what are these numbers that we are staring at here? So people realize that they can become more profitable. For instance, if customer calls can come down. Today it's taking forever and forever to handle one call. So we could reduce that by half, if not half, maybe around that half. Here the survey shows you that we are talking about 60% cut in customer call durations. What does that mean? It means your productivity. It means that that officer can be deployed, and he can do a few other useful things, and he's ending up doing something useless. Okay, now moving forward, the next data point: greater employee productivity as a natural outcome of the previous one, for instance. But it's a whole host of such customer call kind of things which increases. If you really deploy it across the organization, you're looking at a 40% increase and boost in your employee productivity. Okay, and look at financial markets. I mean, not markets. Look at the banking and financial segment. Okay? How much of crimes are happening? I'm not talking about top-notch, anti-money laundering, all those big words and all that. There is a situation where every day head of a bank is being told that within his own branch, or whether it is in his zone, or whether it is in his entire corporate office, that these are the defaulters. So out of the defaulters, now this is moving into the NPA list. Okay, so if it goes into the NPA, then what happens? People who take loans and then just disappear. So how do you improve that? There is a study which clearly says 70% less false financial crime alerts can come up, and you are not driving away the real genuine customer. Otherwise, you can end up rubbing on the wrong side. Okay, if you're looking at administrative workloads, much of it is repetitive. So you're not just your RPAs, but AI infused RPA would get into overall removing the repetitive component and making it just in time as a prerequisite for the next stage of a workflow. And in terms of response to a particular incident, typically, let's say there is a breach in security, or there is an outage in a service. Okay, that's an incident, right? So if a critical server, how many times we've gone to these customer care centers, sir, server problem, sir, server gone, sir. They say, so what is the meaning of that? It simply means that there is an incident and there isn't a response. So imagine they are talking of with AI-enabled systems to be able to cover that 6 times faster, right? Now, all this, now if you look at McKinsey as a company, what they have, the value deployed, value from deployed AI, they say, summarizing all of this, is 41% agree that it is significant and 37 moderate. So they have not experienced it yet. So if you really speaking, this 37 will, this is 2019 again, would have moved up into the 41. So if you just do a simple math on that, 40 plus 30, you're talking about 70 to 80% of people in that leadership role understand this. Okay. Now, how do businesses operate? I'll just pause for a brief moment to let you take a look at this a chart. Okay, we've discussed the AI ladder, but having done that, when you come now and see the different people in the CXO community, we are talking about, risk and compliance as a function, IT operations, which is the guy in the background, financial chief, the business operations chief, okay, which is so important. What should you collect when you get a new customer in Vodafone? Those kind of things. Customer service, having won a client, how happy do you keep him, right? So these, which we have shown in the start, these 5 key functions, okay, the way they operate is so very different. I gave you an example right at the start of how a credit card default on my part, I ended up having to receive a call, which is so dramatically different from all what I've known, what I have deployed and recommended in my consulting career to various people. It has now moved one step forward. So ultimately, this 4 aspects, that the job that the CIO is doing, or the business operations guy is doing, or the financial officer is doing. Okay, how do you clear a credit for a particular large customer, for an important customer? Or how do we negotiate purchasing? What are the credit terms? How do you make it? Do you make it predictive? Apply this now here. When you're talking to a customer, do you only want to react? Would you like to call up a customer and say, sir, according to what we understand, by now, your hard disk must be in this condition. I'm talking about a large server, let's say, and it could be nearing a point where the performance is not at peak and at a suboptimum level. So that is predictive. You're not waiting for him. And right away, if you don't make this phone call today, 3 days later, he's going to call and say, I don't know what is happening. The payroll is taking, like, one uploading of a file has taken us, the processing of that file has taken us more than 4 times the normal amount. And it became a big issue. CEO has fired me, HR VP is shouting at me, and all of these kind of things. So if it is being transformed, each of these functions, what are the key words that you need to note as faculty members? That these workflows have to be predictive in nature, that they have to be a lot automated. They have to be very nimble and agile. Agile is a word that you're all so fond of from your water flow methods to the current agile methods in project management. And then obviously to be very trusted. So when you turn around and use an AI engine and say that, let's take a case of oncology in Manipal hospitals, where they use artificial intelligence to be able to give a second opinion to somebody on, let's say, who's in a 3rd stage cancer. So if you are going to endorse that, or if you're going to disagree to that, whichever stand the machine takes. I have a nice video, but I hope by the end of this I'll be able to figure out how to. It's a little long. It's about 2 minutes 40 seconds, but that's on Project Debater. I would love to show that to you if I'm able to get the audio through to you, or I'll give it to you for homework and you can go and see. It's a very short video. So again, predictive, automated, agile, trusted. These are the key words for our students going out there and re-looking at the way each function has to reinvent itself along these lines. And that's how the business will ultimately transform itself. So transformation is not overnight, but if you follow these kind of the ladder method, and then you look at these ways in which you can transform their operations, that will lead to it finally. Bringing in AI here is not going to be waving the magic wand. I did allude to it earlier, saying that AI could be the magic wand, but it is not that kind of an adacadabra, as they say, and everything is going to happen. There is a learning cycle to it. There is so much that goes into it. So look at this chart obviously refers to the earlier one. Look at the customer, service part of it. There is so much of data complexity today, and there is a fluidity. It doesn't remain the same. It's complex, yes, but it also becomes, what was true last night of this client customer may not be very true as of this morning. It's like your SpO2 levels in the corona patient. It can be dropping down to 85, it can go up to 96. It's real time, right? It's moving up and down. So the fluidity is there. So when you're looking at intelligent workflows and realizing that they are complex, how do you get them to self-build? That is where it is. And so let us go around this in a clockwise fashion. You have, when it comes to documentation, complex document and expertise learning. So how does this is something which almost every function has. How do you transfer when an employee resigns? There's something called as a KT, knowledge transfer. Is it that simple? I mean, I've done so many KTs, I've received so many KTs in my career. But I can say that, going one step beyond KTs, the induction program itself, the onboarding process itself, there's so much of expertise that one has to get. So how do you get more out of it? Okay, how do you create trust in an AI system? Let's take this Manipal Hospital's example. If you're going there, by the way, people are paying a huge sum of money. Patients are paying a huge sum of money. Instead of just going for a second opinion to another doctor or to another relative or somebody, which they will anyway do, they are coming and actually looking at a machine to tell them, AI system to tell them. By the way, it's a doctor as well, because Dr. Watson was one of our founders, and so we call, that the IBM's AI offering is called Watson. So here it's playing Dr. Watson. They consult after Dr. Ayyappan or Dr. John or Dr. Mohammed. It comes back to Dr. Watson, and Dr. Watson, can I trust it? Can I go ahead and authorize and sign on that consent form to operate upon my loved one based on a second report, a second opinion that an AI machine has given me? Think about it. Data privacy, regulatory compliance, changing by the minute, getting more and more complex. Okay, to what extent you feel irritated and hurt? I get it all the time. When I find, why are they asking for me to, when I'm logging in using this app or that app, why should I go and put a password? And the way they put that message, it could be a phishing in disguise. So how do you take what is required, maintaining the privacy of the person? Okay, the large multinationals are taking this very, very seriously. Employees like, multinationals like IBM, they are trained. They have to undergo an annual training program, no matter how senior you are, year on year on this, and then any breach on this would mean it could become an issue, and leading to even the separation from the organization, because it's that important. In India, it may not attract such a legal backlash, but in many overseas countries, data privacy and going against the regulation could cost the company its life. Moving on into the 7 o'clock position on your charts, capturing knowledge in various models you create. Okay, mind you, not capturing data that has happened already earlier. So capturing knowledge, that is where I wish I can show you this video on Data Debater, which quite a few of you would have already seen. And then in the 9 o'clock position, answer extraction with natural language understanding. Again, I wish I can show that stuff. It's all relating. That's why I've chosen that video. We'll come to it in the end if things go well. Now, look at this simple chart for a moment, okay? This is the current scenario. What is the current scenario? The current scenario simply says that when you're, doing work, most of it is chaotic. Most of it is a crisis management mode. It is reacting to an incident. The fire has happened, call the fire engine and switch off the fire, right? An accident has happened, try to save the life. Why did the child fall into the well? If you had built a wall around it, it would not have fallen. So preventive. So where is the preventive stuff? So this is today the company resources. all of those manpower which you're spending so much on. They work from home during pandemic, work partially in between as a transition, whatever it is, the resources, they are spending a disproportionate amount of their valuable working hours on very low value risk management activities. And it is so reactive. This is the scenario. And if you were to just flip this over, okay, this is how it should be. I've just flipped the colors over. When you bring in that magic wand, Lawrence, make up your mind. Is it a magic wand or not? Okay, I keep teasing you, teasing my audience. So you can wave this magic of AI thoughtfully, sustained over a period of time in a methodic manner, and the entire time and focus, everything becomes very proactive. And there will still be some amount of the old style of functioning, which is more an exception and not otherwise. So here, what happens is AI, it is shifting the focus of the manpower, human capital, to higher value tasks. Is it important to ask a question? Sir, please identify yourself. What is your father's middle name? Sir, what is your date of birth? Is this required to be done by a human being? That human being, that human intervention should rather on the phone call try to understand and evaluate what is the risk of this person if I were to give them a credit card with a, let's say, a credit limit of 1 lakh or 50,000, whatever it is. That's what the human being is supposed to do. Now, take a technology which is AI centered, anchored in AI, chatbots, right? I have been in a bank where globally they have implemented this. And when you talk, you're first talking to a chatbot, which takes care of all the essential basic things which earlier the IVR used to do. But a chatbot is that much more personal, and it implements and runs through the various level 1, level 2, level 3 kind of conversation modules. And then eventually, at a point where it is algorithmically ready to hand over to an agent comes in and then introduces himself or herself, and then the conversation proceeds. So that amount of time, instead of waiting in the queue, you would have been served by an engine. So that is what this is referring to. Now, let's look at the population. Oh, we are running terribly out of time now. I'll try to speed up a little bit, which I'm saying, but I'm not doing. Okay, you look at the children that you're producing, the talent that you're producing out for consumption by industry. Okay, look at those of your students, those of you who've been for a number of years or decade or more. Look at your batch of students who passed out 10 years ago. Look at that age group. Look at their peers across an organization across India. And then you will realize that, when you look at the total population and try to attempt a kind of an analysis on that, the population of professionals is very diverse. I'm sorry, I just turned it. I forgot to do these basic housekeeping things before the call. So they are quite diverse. For example, if you look at today's company, which has started this AI journey, you will find that the number of internal employees who are consuming the data that is available in the organization, that is a large number. Okay, then there are people who keep playing around with it from an exploratory perspective, okay, to do discoveries and do various analysis. That will be a smaller number, and then an even smaller number for those who are doing the analytics based on some tools and all of that. And when you look at the data scientist, it's just a fraction. And the percentages are there on your screen. For 60% of the workforce, if it is sitting down in between data consumers and explorers, you got 90%. Only 10% is left to analytics and data scientists, and that too, data scientists are just the tip of the iceberg at 2%. Okay, so Just excuse me, I'm sorry to take this liberty. I'm just switching off my mobile. Yeah. That screen has gone off again. Entire screen. It's 11:15 now. So here you are. I'm sorry for that. This is really embarrassing. Anyway, so to move quickly out of the slide, the the workforce is very diverse, and your students are going to fit into one of this, and the mindsets for each of this is different. Can one move from one into the other? Yes, logically, but then there is a different mindset for a data scientist than the casual consumer who's just doing a low value operations in an organization, because to be looking at modeling, because that's where the last stage in the ladder, the infusion and the operationalization part of it happens, right? Um, um, okay. Now, when you look at analytics, the way it could be, now I'm getting into a sort of a prescription, is you look at data, you do all of those preparations, and you have it automated, okay, using various technologies, your NLPs, your various in-tool data preparation techniques, modeling which is suggested, and then you take it from there and then you further customize it. From there, you can go into a situation where after the collection and organization, this relates back to the ladder, but I'm going into some ways that you can actually deliver each of these stages. Is hundreds of questions will keep coming up from various quarters of the organization, okay, and then you have tens of insightful discoveries that will be noticed. Push the doorbell. Tens of insightful discoveries that come out of this, and that happens when you have this function of data exploration being parried by a group of people. And look at what all you have: time series forecasting, okay, that comes under the exploration process, detecting insights automatically, right, and then be able to do some predictions, pattern detections, which is a precursor to predictions. I'm reading it in the ulta direction, and having an AI assistant, and we are all familiar with that on our handhelds. So this sort of movement, I need to run through this quickly, ultimately comes to the purpose of whole of this AI, that is to be able to ultimately present to the decision makers, the CXO, the C-suite, in the case of enterprises, and in the case of non-enterprises, you still have that function, but you may not call them like that. But they still need that dashboard in whatever smaller scale to be able to do what they have to do. Okay, and now moving on. The tens of decisions have been influenced and operationalized. Okay, just excuse me. I must confess, this has never happened to me. I don't know why all the phones are ringing. I just forgot to turn them off before I started this call, and I truly apologize for that. Okay, now the use cases. I have actually 4 industries and 5 use cases, which is quite evident when we take a look at these charts. So please read them along with me. The first industry we're looking at is energy and utilities. Then we'll take 2 of them from consumer space. We'll take 1 from the aviation space. we'll take one from the airport operations space, and then we'll take one from the insurance space, and then we will close the section on. I'll try to run through it really quickly. In all of them, I have organized my thoughts in this fashion. That is, you have got the business needs, you've got pain points. So when you look at what do you call deployment in any place, there is a business need at the core. What is the business need of this particular industry that my student is going to get into? But it has the associated pain points. So power transmission, when you look at power transmission in an electricity utility company, in a distribution company, one of the main problems, one of the major problems that they have is, because they have to run across the countryside from the point of generation to the point of, distribution. So there's a vegetation. So what would you do on that? Now, if you look at the third point, the business needs, we'll quickly read them. Early detection, okay, and response in severe weather events. We have seen how over a period of time our ability to respond improved, because nowadays they tell you beforehand itself, with this kind of a weather forecast, you can experience this cut and so on and so forth. That is common logic. But going one step further, see, IBM acquired a company called the Weather Company. Please do and see all the airlines in the world, take the data from that to be able to make accurate, decisions in terms of takeoff, landing. Should we take off at all on this journey based on the weather? And it's a very close to real stuff that happens. But what have they done here? Now we can actually get that weather data and bring it into this sort of a power transmission area. This is that IQ that we spoke of earlier. How do we connect the dots? There is this data that is available to me on a tap, because my organization is applying for it, is having that service and subscribing to that. So would I be able to bring that and improve here? So how do I deploy a task force at the right time and at the right place? What insights can I take from the weather data location to be able to, action it completely? So the vegetation comes inside as a pain point for you there. And any survey that has been done earlier, practice was you go in helicopters or you take a drive around if it's possible to drive, and you come back with the 10 minutes old data, half an hour old data, 1 hour old data, whereas disasters or anything happens in real time. So how do you, how do you respond to that? So when your students are out there trying to fix work if they are hired by this utility company, they're going to be saying to themselves, how do I automate this whole monitoring and alert system? Data, some part of it, which with all your talk of edge computing, it becomes useless within 5 minutes of its, or its value dramatically decreases within 5 minutes of its being born. A data is created, let's say in a camera, a visual stream is born. So within 5 minutes, if you can't detect something through the vision technologies that you have, the VRs of the world, and to be able to transport it across to the right place and send out, alerts to do certain things, to turn off certain gas pipelines in that area, because you're going to have a seismic, disaster. All of this monitoring and alerting, and then real-time location specific weather and disruption updates, these can be sent to various consumers, let's say, you know that from the government, you take it off, and then a private fellow is distributing it, and it may not be in our country but some other place. How could he act on that, and what kind of decisions can he take? Okay, let's move on to the consumer. There are two use cases here. One is Then it comes to supply assurance, typically from farm to table kind of situations, or forecasting a consumer in a retail kind of an environment. So these are two different use cases, but are coming under the consumer. Today, retail business, wholesale is much more evident, and retail has turned out to be so powerful even in a country like ours. And you've seen it just going through the roof in terms of the way we engage, and the way we go do shopping, and the way we plan a festival and all of that. So if you take the first instance and first use case of consumers that I have here for you, which is basically on the supply, take the food. Those handlers, those who process the food, and those brands, they need to, especially when the shelf lives are short, how do they accurately predict the demand and reduce their losses, and not just add it up to the price point? And today, the easiest way is, especially in this post-pandemic days, or post-flooding like I'm experiencing here from Chennai, I'm talking to you from Chennai, what would happen? Immediately boost the price of tomatoes, boost the price of everything, pass on, because you're going to, your wastage is so high. So it is all loaded onto that. Loading it onto a customer and a poor consumer is not the way of being competitive. So today, if one business is able to offer you a very price competitive point, it is because he has addressed this business need and taken away the older methods which were actually retarding them in terms of manual, labor intensive yield estimations, which were based on some experience and some studies. But they quickly go into real-time monitoring, of the crop, for instance, using all your drone technologies and IoTs of the world, and sensing the soil quality, and various visual impacts. All of this can be fed back into the system to say that this is the condition of the supply. So if I want 100 kilos of a particular vegetable or a crop, yes, it is available from this section. So now, how do I move it from there to here? What is going to happen? All of these thoughts process today is much more, will be far more accurate and less prone to errors, and eventually cost saving, not just to increase your profits, but also to make it, to keep the loyalty of the customer. Now, I already touched on this forecasting part of it from a farming and an agricultural point of view, but the same would hold good for almost everything. Today, there is a very interesting word that is being used, Internet of Behaviors. So when you do a simple Amazon search for buying some gadget that you want, in the bottom there, after you've decided and put it into the shopping cart and you're about to check out, you'll find customers who bought this item also looked at, and one temptation will come there. For those of you who know a little bit of this Christian literature, it says, no, the devil came in the Garden of Eden with that apple and said to Eve, this is a nice apple. Like that, they'll come and quietly tempt you. Behind this joke of temptation is actually a science of machine learning, where patterns are understood, and then buyer behavior is analyzed, and you can even predict how they will respond in this situation. If you give them this discount at this point in time rather than at that point in time, what would be the response? What would be the overall revenue that we can generate in a 3-day window, etc., etc. Now, moving on to airports operations, this is such a complex one. We've got our own, experiences. Almost every one of us around this conference here would have been in an aircraft at some point in time or the other. Having undertaken the air journey, we know that in order for us to take off and land safely, there's so much of ground activity, there's so much of air activity, and so much in between that happens to bring us from A to B location. Now, the weather is one very important point there, and how you can garner that and bring it. So if you look at the business need here, let me just read out, it's a very light slide. How do we protect the employees and customers from injuries caused by adverse weather conditions? Now, a simple, if you were to get into an air pocket, okay, you can sometimes, violent air pockets can end up even with your seatbelts on, to injure the passengers. Now, I'm just giving a very, very mundane, for want of time, mundane example, but that's not it. There are lots more complex situations. The food that is served inside there. How do you know that the bacteria there is not harmful? What should you have done beforehand? How do you check on it? Are you going to use the food inspector methodology to do it? And you know how wonderful these food inspectors are. So what would happen? So a whole lot of operations, and today even more complex with the pandemic. How do these things come inside there now? You know, you've seen enough of videos on WhatsApp as to how contactless stuff is being done because of the pandemic. But nevertheless, behind each of these situations is these technologies, and this industry will continuously benefit from this. And so is risk management in insurance. Before, see, for example, if I were to renew my car insurance, last year, let's say I paid, let's say 20,000 rupees. This year, the guy I would expect would charge me 18,000 rupees, a little bit of a discount. I'm not talking about no claim bonuses and all that. I'm just talking about straight away the value of the car has come down, we expect. But what actually he's doing is he's pushing up the cost and asking me to pay 22,000. And when I ask him, he says, sir, off late, your clutch pedals, the clutch system has been terribly bad. And the way it has been driven, we can't assure you, there's too much of a risk we are taking here. So, and then I realized, I scratched my head, my son got his driving license and he started using my car. So, because it's a connected car, I'm talking about a connected car, or when I take my key, because it's a microprocessor on the dashboard, I give it to the service station. The moment they put that there, that information is fed back to the insurance company. He's able to go down and understand your driving pattern and change the premium amount. I'm just giving you one example. I can keep talking for many of this, but the point is you've got to maintain loyalty as well. You can't just turn away a customer. So, like this, to prevent some huge losses. At the same time, you can. Now, I'm going to have to really skip this section on roles and skills, but I will just, there are 5 charts in this. If I talk to all the 5 charts, you guys will be late for your next talk. So I have to stop, a hard stop now in the next 1 minute, Professor Dilip. So on this chart, I'm going to stop now. So when you look at the various, on your left of your chart, you will see the various things that are being done. We have touched on this in multiple charts earlier: collecting, organizing, analyzing, and deploying or infusing. But the people who make this happen, here they are. Now, this is not a hierarchy chart that you find on the right-hand side of your screens here. It is not that the data engineer is more than the data steward, or the other way around, that the data engineer is subservient to the data steward. There's no particular order of hierarchy here. That way, the data scientist should have been at one extreme end, but it is right in the middle there. So all these people, and this is where you need to look at, honing the skills of students in terms of the mindset, in terms of what they want to do and how they want to move forward, because these are the people who are going to influence the decision makers who will finally take that one call. So on that note, I'm just going to let's say skip this and say thank you very much. And I'm so sorry for the various clumsy things I did on the call here. And on a parting note, let me read this out to you. In business today, if I only meet your needs, I'm not going to be competitive. I'm behind. My customer is going to walk away from me. The one way I can change this is by a very planned, systematic way of deploying AI. Okay, now let me come out of this. Let me stop the sharing and come here. Now, I warmly recommend that each of you, I can see at this point 47 people on the participants list. I request you very earnestly to please go into YouTube and just spend 2 minutes sometime today, tomorrow. Those of you who have not done it before, I'm talking about IBM's Project Debater. Project Debater is basically AI engine, which You know that IBM earlier played a game of chess and defeated the grandmaster, the Russian grandmaster Garry Kasparov, and that was sometimes back on a machine called Deep Blue. But today, you know, when it comes to a human conversation, there are no rules and regulations, right? And there's so much of you know, mood and tone and accent and all of that, and to be able to convincingly change the mindset of people. There are lengthy videos at 45 minutes and 1 hour. Please don't view them. Go look at the short ones. There is this one particular one which is just you know, which is best. If you can note down the name, IBM Robo Project Debater Can Argue with Humans. I repeat, if those of you who are interested, you may quickly write it down. You search in YouTube for this string, IBM Robo Project Data Can Argue with Humans. I would really recommend look at this. It's just 2 minutes, 20 seconds. It will show you the power of what AI can do in real-time businesses, and it is in fact alluded there how they can take this to various aspects of life. On this note, thank you very much for being such a patient audience and putting up with me, and to the management, thank you very much for having me over to spend this time with such an august audience. Thank you so much, and bye for now.
Sir, in the chat box, one query is there, sir. We do not have something like HIPAA compliance in our country.
Sorry, can you repeat? Let me go to the chat box now.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Where is
that? We do not have something like HIPAA.
Dr. Shankar says we don't have something like HIPAA compliance in our country. Okay, so the point is whether we will reach that stage, whether we are talking HIPAA for healthcare or GDPR in the banking, all these regulatory things, Dr. Shankar, is something that if it is not already here, it will someday or the other fall in place. We are moving at a tremendous pace. The lack of, you know, a rule or a regulation does not mean that we shouldn't prepare. Moreover, look at your workforce. What percentage of them are serving? They're sitting down in our land, but they may be actually offshoring. So they are in a totally different environment. So I think it's important that starting with me as a faculty, I first understand all of this, and then to that extent give exposure to my students so that they are at least aware of all this, and you know, at the on a timely basis, they get themselves, ongoing basis, get themselves updated. Yes, Professor Dilip.
Hello, sir. On behalf of SEC management and the principal of the college and head of the department, of the coordinator of the this function, this FDP, I will thank sir your detailed explain of AI in field business and in detail about AI ladder, decision making, use cases, and roles and stakeholders. All the detailed explanation. I thank sir for your sharing the valuable speech. And also, I thank to sir. We will coordinate. We will again 2 years. You are the one of the member of DOSC member, DOS Board of Studies. We will contact you, sir, in the future also. Yeah, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.